What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. As the title and thumbnail say, I did indeed get a new tank. I'm going to get to that here in just a second. And this is not going to be the most, I wouldn't say the most entertaining video, just because there's a lot of things I want to get to in this video. I'm not actually setting up the tank in this video. That'll be in the next video. But there's a lot of things I want to kind of go over in this video, some things that have changed, how that tank even got there, what tank it replaced, what I'm going to be doing with that tank. That way in the next video when I set the tank up, that's all I'll be doing in the next video. I won't have to be explaining the whole situation with that tank. So the tank that used to be right here was the 30-gallon hexagon tank, and that tank just did not fit what I wanted to do, like fish-wise. So I ended up getting rid of it. I sold it and got a 75-gallon. As you can tell, it fits this little space perfectly. So I've already got the driftwood in there. I'm going to have place sand on the bottom and get some nice big artificial plants in there, at least for now. I would like to do live plants in it later on, but some of the fish that I'll be putting in there will not coexist with some of those plants. So basically this is going to be a South American tank. It's going to be a truly themed South American fish tank, and I think it's going to look pretty darn nice. I'm going to get the sand today. I've already got the glass covers, got some other stuff going into it right there, got the canister filter. Everything's ready to go. Just got to get the sand, get it washed, get it in there, and we'll be setting it up in the next video. So I feel like I should start with this tank right here, the African Cichlid tank. I have not shown this tank in a few months, and a whole lot has changed. So as you can tell, there's some different cichlids in here now. There's new frontosas, the Leprinus, he's still in here, and so are the Synodontis catfish in the back. That sucker is fat. Basically here about two and a half months ago, something went wrong with this tank, and unfortunately I actually lost majority of the Africans, including the frontosas, but I was able to keep the two electric blue jack dempseys, the Leprinus, and the catfish. But something really affected the African cichlids, and I'm really not sure what went on. Checked the water, everything checked out. The ammonia, there's really no ammonia. The pH was good. I don't really know what happened, but obviously I've kind of semi-restocked it. I'm being very selective as the peacocks and certain Africans that I add in here. I do want this to be more of a peacock tank now, but I've kind of semi-restocked it. I've also gotten two new frontosas. They're smaller than the ones I had in here, but since they've been in here, they've done already some nice growing, so they're doing great. But it was really just the Africans that it affected. The South American fish, you know, the Leprinus and the electric blue jack dempseys, they were totally fine. But these guys, these new Africans, have been in here now for a good 2 months. They've done totally fine. So whatever was wrong with the tank is not wrong with it anymore. So that's good. So pretty much everything was chilling with the tank. And then up until, I would say, probably about 2 or so weeks ago, the two electric blue jack dempseys started like breathing really, really heavily. And it didn't really make a whole lot of sense because everybody else in the tank was not doing that. They were acting totally fine, but they started breathing really, really heavily and stopped eating, so it didn't really make a whole lot of sense. Checked the water though, it was totally fine. And then after a few days went by, they were still doing it. So the only thing I could think of, you know, whenever you see fish breathing excessively, one of the things, you know, it can be a number of different things, but one of the things that comes to mind is, you know, maybe a lack of oxygen in the water. So I added that little air stone over there, even though I have two big 350 hang on the backs. By the way, both of the filters I had on here between the time that you guys last saw the tank actually went out. I had an old 350 over there and an old 400 right here. Both of them went out pretty close together, so these are two brand new 350s. I also have a 1200 gallon per hour pump in here right there, and then plus this, and that didn't make a whole lot of sense. This tank doesn't have a ton of fish in it, and none of the other fish were showing signs that there was lack of oxygen in the water. So, but I just tried it out anyway, and obviously that did not help out. So then I thought maybe it was something to do with just this tank. So I took them out and I actually put them in the bow front tank with some smaller fish, and that did not help either. And at that point I kind of knew what was going on, what was going to happen, and unfortunately I did lose them. And those are easily two of my favorite fish that I've ever kept in the 9 years that I've been doing this. Really, really love those fish. I know they were a lot of your guys' favorite fish, and I had a lot of comments about those fish in particular. But anyone who's new to the hobby, let me just get this point across to you. You're going to have, like, if you stick with the hobby long enough, you're in it long enough and you really get into it, you're going to have stuff that it's just really, really puzzling, you know, with the African cichlid tank, what happened, and with those fish right there. I'm pretty darn sure it was something completely separate because, like I said, there was a good probably 2 months separate timing between of when I started losing those Africans and when the electric blue Jack Dempsey started doing that. And when I was losing those African cichlids, they were not showing any signs of excessive breathing like the Jack Dempseys were. So I think it was something totally different. I don't think those two correlated, what took out the Africans and what took out the Jack Dempseys, but this is, I mean, you're going to have stuff like this sometimes that there's just really no explanation for. You can kind of ponder on it, and, you know, people will give you kind of ideas of what it might be, but you just don't really know, and that's just kind of part of the hobby. You kind of have stuff happen like that sometimes, but man, I really like those fish, and they were going to be a true, obviously a true focal point in this 75-gallon tank right here. They were going to be two of probably the best looking fish in this tank because they are South American cichlid, and I think they would have looked great in this tank. You know, I started those guys out when they were itty bitty about 3 or so years ago, got them up to a good 5 or so inches, and man, it sucks I lost them. But I will end up getting 2 new ones. They're going to have to be really small because you just about can't find any good size ones, at least for a good price, because man, those fish are expensive. But it'll probably be, you know, some of the last fish that I add to this tank. I'm going to get this tank really nice and established with some fish already in it, and then I'll start trying to find, you know, 2 new really good looking Jack Dempseys for it. So it sucks, but it happened, and you just kind of have to move on. So pretty much the only fish that's going to be coming out of this tank and going into the 75-gallon when I get it all nice and set up is going to be the banded leperinus. This guy, he's about halfway grown. He's sitting at about 6-7 inches right now. He's been in here for quite a while, and him being a South American fish, he's going to go into that tank. And then I'll probably add, I want to really, you know, kind of load this tank up with peacocks. This guy is kind of the dominant one in here, and I'm hoping that when I start to add more and more, hopefully I can get him to kind of cool off a little bit. And he has actually, he has kind of cooled off here in the last couple of weeks, but once I get some bigger peacocks in here to kind of challenge him, I'm hoping that he will really settle down. So the frontos will stay in here. Nobody picks on them, even though they're the smallest fish in here. Got the electric blue Ali, which is really a hat. That peacock, and that's pretty much it. So we'll still have the Synodontis in here, but other than that, it'll be nothing but African cichlids and predominantly peacocks. I'll be very selective as the ones that I add in here, and we'll try to, I really want to get it up towards 8 or 10 at the very least, peacock-wise. So we'll see how that goes. And how about this tank? Here's the bow front tank. It looks, I know, completely different, like totally different from the last time you guys saw this tank. Actually, 2 of the large pieces of driftwood in that tank were in this tank right here. And about half of this rock, about pretty much that rock on that side of the tank, came out of the 30-gallon hex tank, and then I bought this kind of other half to kind of pile in this rock formation. And a lot of these fish, actually majority of them, are going to be going into the 75-gallon. You have the Sebrums in here, you got the Blue Acaras, the Buenos Aires Tetras, all these guys are going to be going into there. The Le Lupe, however, this is what this tank is going to be, and that's kind of how I escaped this tank, for it to be a Tanganyika tank. I really want it to be more of Le Lupe and Gelida chromis. We'll just have to see how they kind of, you know, get along. This guy's a pretty decent size Le Lupe. I've had this guy for quite a while now, and I know he's not going to let just any other Tanganyikans come in here, so I'm going to have to find some that are decent size that can hang with him, and that is going to be very, very difficult, but that's what I want this tank to be. And obviously I kind of planted some Anubias in some of the areas that it would fit nicely in here, and some of these bigger Anubias, I'm going to add 2 more rocks, 2 more of these white rocks in here, one for that Anubias, one for that one, and we'll have kind of 3 out here, and then the formation back there. Also added another bubble wand, so we have 2 of those back there, 12 inchers, and puts, you know, some cool looking bubbles in the back. And it's a brand new light. I finally added a new light on this tank, talked about it for a while, finally did it. This is the Generation 2 Nicrew LED. Really, really like it. You can tone the blues and the whites down. You can put it on a timer. Really nice light, and it's the same exact light that I got for the 75-gallon, obviously just the next size up. That is a 48 to 60 inch. This is a 36 to 48, I want to say. So I've got it sitting, obviously the whole light itself is a 36 inch, but with these pegs that come out, that makes it extend out a little bit farther. So now this guy, I have not decided what I'm going to do with him. This is that little spotted leperinus, and he is considerably smaller smaller compared to the big banded Leporinus. So I don't really know if he's going to stay in this tank and get a little more size on him before I move him into the 75-gallon. He can be a kind of a testy fish too sometimes. He doesn't really go out of his way to mess with anybody. I know you just saw him kind of nip at that several, and he just did it again. But for the most part, he's a pretty mellow fish. But I don't know how him and the big banded Leporinus will get along together. They might get along just fine in that larger tank. So I don't know if I'll keep him in here for a little while longer and let him get a little bit bigger with the Tanganicans, or if I'll go ahead and move him at the same time with all these other fish. That I have not decided just yet. But this tank looks a whole lot different now. Like I said, a lot of these fish are going to be coming out of here and going into the 75-gallon, and this tank will be more of a Tanganican cichlid tank from there. So we'll see how that goes. So yeah, that was a whole lot of stuff that's kind of changed over, the last couple of months or so. And by the way, this is not something that I've just kind of suddenly thought about doing. This is something I've been thinking about doing for a few months now. I just haven't mentioned it to any of you guys, but it's going to be pretty cool. I think this is going to be probably one of my more good looking tanks, show tank wise, when I'm all set and done with it. And I'm going to go with the artificial plants just for now, just because of some of the fish I want to add in here, like I said, are not going to, not going to let the plants just be in there. They're going to try to eat them. The Buenos Aires are kind of known for nipping at plants. They did it in the past when I had them in the hexagon tank. And also another fish I want to add in here kind of goes after plants too. So, and I could end up taking those fish out and putting live plants in here later on. I would like to do some cryptocorn out in the front, maybe some Amazon swords and jungle val in the back. I think that would look really nice, and I think the plants would do a whole lot better if I waited a little bit longer and let that sand get kind of seasoned, let it get more nutrients in it. I think the plants would actually do a whole lot better if I waited a couple of months before I added them in here, instead of just adding them into straight play sand, because that's the sand I'm going to have in here. It's a really fine sand. It's the same kind of sand I have in the big 800-gallon pond outside, and it'll kind of fit the theme of a South American tank. So it should look really nice. I'm about to go get that here in just a second. I think I'll add about 3 20 or 25-pound bags in here. I think that'll give us a nice layer. And by the way, the reason why I went ahead and put the driftwood in here was to kind of see how I want it, and I think this is kind of how I want it, but also because of these plates that weigh the driftwood down. If I was to put the sand in there, it is really, really hard to get these plates to go down into the sand, and they also take up room. And these plates are a good 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch thick, so they take up a little bit of room whenever you're trying to plant plants down in the substrate and actually give them a nice thick amount of substrate to have the roots in. So that's why I went ahead and put them in there first, and then once I add the sand in here, it'll just be over top of the plates, and I won't have to try to dig the plates down in the sand, because it's pretty difficult when you try and do that. But got to get the sand in there, driftwood out here. Gonna put that artificial but pretty realistic log looking in there, probably somewhere right here. And then I've got these plants right here. They're not very tall. They came out of the Bowfront tank. They're probably 12 or 14, 16-inch plants, something like that. I'll kind of find a spot for them in there temporarily, and I've got some real short plants to go out in the front. But I am ordering 2 really tall 20-inch plants, the same kind that I just showed you guys. And obviously this being a 21-inch tall tank, that'll make those plants go from the bottom to pretty much nearly the top, and it'll really fill in the background really nicely. So for now, it'll be artificial plants. Won't look quite as well, but it'll still, I think, look really, really nice. So I'm excited to set this tank up. I've been wanting to do this for a few months now, and it's going to be really, really nice. So be sure to come back in the next video. But that's going to pretty much do it for now. Like I said, wasn't, the most entertaining video, but next video will when I set that tank up, so be sure to come back for that. Probably be posting that video sometime Sunday. If you guys did enjoy this video, though, please be sure to drop a like down below. Hit that subscribe button if you guys are new to the channel. Tap that little bell. That way you get notified every time that I upload a video. And with that being said, I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.